Well, welcome again. We are excited to be at the beginning of a new series. We've been in it the last couple of weeks. Our series is called We Are Disciple Makers. And it's going to be a series where we are going through the last words Jesus gives to us in the Gospel of Matthew called the Great Commission. These are words that the church are supposed to fulfill and live by. And it is a core value of our church that we are disciple makers. And I do want to remind us, when we say we are disciple makers as a core value, we are saying this, that we live by him and for him. We commit to being prayerful, authentic, and active witnesses for Christ in our lives. Together we work to be a multiplying church. That's what we want to be as a church that multiplies, a church that is active in sharing the good news of Jesus, that is fulfilling the Great Commission. And because that is a priority to us, we have decided to devote our fall to really grasping these words Jesus gave us at the end of Matthew 28. Last week, you may recall that we looked at what it means to be a disciple. If we're going to make disciples, we have to know what a disciple is. And we saw that a disciple really has 4 marks. A disciple is someone who knows Jesus. A disciple is someone who knows themselves through Jesus. A disciple is one whose life is in Jesus. And finally, a disciple is one who makes disciples for Jesus. And so as we think about that last one, that a disciple is a disciple maker, the question then is begged, how? How do we make disciples? And that's our focus for our message today. That to make disciples, we must heed the command, go. The Great Commission starts with this command, go. It's a small little word, but it is of pivotal significance. Thinking about the significance of the word go, I was reminded of a major battle in World War II. That happened in Italy called the Battle of Anzio. This happened in 1944. The Battle of Anzio. Anzio is a little coastal town on the Sea of Italy. It is an access point for the Allied forces to get to Rome, to make a major invasion against the Germans. And so the Allied forces made a determination that they would bring a force, an amphibian force, up through the beach of Anzio to try and get into a major footing in the war. And the general that was in charge of this major operation was General John P. Lucas. This mission was difficult from the very beginning. They first of all had to get on the beach, so they had to establish a beachhead. But in addition to the beachhead, they had to really depend on the element of surprise. Because this beach in Anzio was surrounded by mountains and was marshy land that was very difficult, could cause you to get stuck and mired in. And the mountains could easily become fortified positions for the Germans. And so getting on the beach was the first part of the mission, but the surprise of getting through this area was most significant. If they could get through with surprise, they could perhaps even take Rome and have victory in just a few days. In fact, on January 22nd, 1944, they landed, they established the presence on the beach, and they were even able to send scouts that got all the way to Rome without any hindrance. They had the element of surprise. They had everything that they needed to have a successful operation. They could cut off the supply lines of the Germans. They could capture Rome. They could have a major success. But at the exact moment where this army needed to go, the general, Lucas, instead used 8 days securing the beachhead in Anzio. He spent 8 days making sure that all of the supplies, all of the soldiers, all of the generals and authorities were in place. And in those 8 days, they gave up the advantage of the surprise. In those 8 days, they found the German forces recollecting, regathering, and populating those mountains all around that beach. And so they found themselves surrounded by well-fortified, well-armed Germans. And what could have been accomplished, this mission that could have been accomplished in just a few days, led to a 125-day siege on this beach. 35,000 Allied casualties were the result. Winston Churchill wrote of this debacle that it was supposed to be a wildcat that was put on that beach, but instead we ended up with a beached whale. This entire operation shows us how important it is when the command is to go, to go. Anzio is a warning of prioritizing the beachhead over the mission. And we need to heed that warning as we hear Jesus' orders to us in the Great Commission. Jesus gives us the word go because our mission is not a beachhead. Our mission is the world. I appreciate what Professor Garrett says of the Great Commission. He says that the Great Commission reminds all disciples that the church must be on the march, conquering new territory until a witness to the love of Jesus Christ exists in every place, in every language, expressed in ways that are meaningful to every culture. That is the mission. Our mission is not a beachhead, but the world. And so today's message is to grasp, what does go require? What does go require? And I would suggest as we look at the Great Commission, there are three answers of what go requires. The first is that go requires obedience. Go requires obedience. Let's look at the Great Commission again, just how it starts. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. The word go is in the tense of a command. It is a command. It is an order. The Great Commission then cannot be grappled with, cannot be grasped, cannot be understood apart from it being a matter of obedience. The Great Commission calls us to obey. Now, obedience is an important part of the Christian life. It is an important part of who we are, but we also have to understand when we get a command, the context that a command occurs to us. And there is a very important linking word that comes with go that tells us how we are to understand this command. And that word is therefore. Jesus says, go therefore. Why does he say therefore? Therefore connects us to what he just said, what was said in verse 18. And that is that all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. Go therefore. Clearly, therefore links this command go to this statement of authority given to Jesus. And here we have an example of a way of communication that is pretty much universal in communicating the gospel and gospel obedience. It's what I call gospel logic. And that is this, that when we come to an imperative in the gospel, a command to do something, we find that those commands are grounded in what we would call a gospel indicative, a statement of what has been done. And it is recognizing that our imperative to do is grounded in the indicative of done that we conduct ourselves with obedience. Here is why this is so important. If you come to the idea that a command is just something you must do, then you feel like you have no standing, you have insecurity until you have done it, until you have obeyed it. But the obedience that the gospel calls us to is not obedience to get approved. It is obedience that comes from being approved. So when we say that our commands come out of the gospel indicative of what is done, we are saying this. Obedience is not to receive salvation. Obedience is a response to the salvation we already have. That is how we think about commands in the gospel. We do this not to earn God's favor. We do this out of response from what has already been given and accomplished. And that's why we must grapple with the word therefore as we understand go as an act of obedience. Therefore it tells us that it is a command that is a result of Jesus receiving all authority. He has already done it. There is nothing to be won. He has done all that is required to have all authority. So do you understand what it is to be a disciple maker, to carry the good news? Well, it's basically you are a messenger. The word gospel in the context of the first century was usually the message that was given to somebody who was just on a battlefield that had been won and was told to run and share that good news with the people that we have won. Famously, the race of a marathon was brought to existence because a person back in Greece ran 26.4 miles all the way to the place of marathon to announce the victory, to announce the gospel, the good news. And so when we recognize that we are announcers of what Jesus has already done, it helps us to recognize what our obedience is. The Great Commission is not a command to win the world for Christ. It's not a command to win the world for Christ. He's won. The victory has already happened. The Great Commission is a command to report Christ's victory to the world. You are coming with the message, the King has come, the war has been won. Whose side are you on? That's a much different situation than feeling like you have to win the battle, because the battle has already been won. The authority has already been given. We live in the victory of Christ and we obey, go in the victory of Christ. So what? It's still hard. Still hard to take that command go. But when we recognize that the command go is grounded in the finished work of Jesus, the motivation that we need to obey is right there. You see, the motivation for our obedience comes from beholding Him more. The more that you dwell upon Jesus as the one who has all authority, the one who has the victory, the more you will be confident to share that message. Maybe an illustration from your school days. Imagine that you had a major test, was worth a big part of your grade, and you didn't know the material. That test caused you fear, caused you trepidation. You would just sit there looking at the piece of paper and you could do nothing. You were inactive. You were unable to obey the command to take the test. But now suppose you had been given the answer key. You were given it, not because you're a cheater, just because the teacher just gave it to you and said, study this answer key. And you knew that you had the answer key before the test. And you spent your time looking into, dwelling, knowing, understanding, grasping the answer key. When the test day comes, does that change your readiness to take the test? Oh, absolutely. Well, the same thing is what we are being told here. Study Jesus. Know His victory. Know that He is already the victor over sin and death and the devil. Know that He is your deliverer, that He has paid your ransom, that He has redeemed you from the pit, that He has extinguished the flaming darts of the evil one aimed at you, that you are secure in everlasting life, that your inheritance is in heaven and it cannot be taken away. Dwell upon all of that. Take that in. Know the answer key of the gospel and the command to go and share it becomes much less intimidating. You see, the more we understand Christ's victory, the readier our obedience becomes. So if our obedience is sluggish or lackluster, take in the one who is giving the command. Listen, huddling in the beachhead is more foolish for us than it was for the forces in 1944, because they still had a battle to win. But we have already got the victory. We already have the good news. We already have won. So there is no reason for us to huddle and to collect on the beachhead and not go. We take the good news across the face of the earth because the whole face of the earth has been conquered by Christ. Now the question becomes at this point, how does the earth become covered with Christ's victory? And I think that is the second answer to what does go require. Go requires intentionality. Go requires intentionality. Now, grammatically, the word go in the Great Commission is the helper verb of make disciples. It's go and make disciples. Those go together. So go is just a small part of the larger mission of making disciples. However, it is an essential part. We cannot make disciples without going. And go is a command because go is not accidental. Go is not something that just happens. Go only happens when we will it, when we are intentional. In fact, in the construction of this command, when you look at the Greek, the word go is put at the very beginning of the sentence. It is put in the place of emphasis. In the Greek language, word order can be moved around and treated in all sorts of different ways, but it is significant what is put as the first word, as the emphasis. And the word go is in that emphatic position in the Great Commission. What does that tell us? Go is put first in this command to keep us from treating it second. Go is put first to keep us from treating it second. There's a lot of wisdom in Jesus who gave us the Great Commission because he knows our tendency to press a command like go down the priority list. We have a tendency in our heart to run out of time, to get too busy, to get occupied with other priorities. And so the word go, if it is not fixed as the priority, as the number one, will drift down to the bottom of our to-do list. I probably don't have to explain that any further. I'm sure you understand that from your own life. I certainly live this dilemma myself. So how do we remain intentional? How do we make the word go a strong guide to our will that sets above everything? How do we make go first? This is a call in the Great Commission to develop for ourselves an intentional mindset, a mindset that renews our places. And so first, the Apostle Peter in his first epistle tells us in chapter 3, verse 15, some words about the intentionality that we are supposed to develop in ourselves to make sure that go remains number one. He says, in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. I believe Peter is giving us counsel on how to be intentional in going and making disciples. He is giving us a mindset that makes us prepared and ready for gospel disciple making. Now, I've shared this before in a message a while back, but I think it is a useful acronym to help us keep track of what this mindset looks like. And so as we think about renewing our places, renewing our workplace, renewing our home, renewing our neighborhood, renewing our sports team, those are different places that God has sovereignly placed us. How do we develop a mindset that takes 1 Peter 3:15 of intentionality into the places that God has called us to go? So I want to use the word places to develop an acronym, to develop this mindset of being intentional. So the first thing I want us to think about when it comes to being mindful in places is to start with prayer. If we want to be intentional, we need to start with prayer to be disciple makers, to be renewers, to be gospel messengers in the places that we go. 1 Peter says that our life should be one where it is described as in your hearts, honor Christ. I don't know how you can honor Christ in your hearts, but to have a constant connection, constant conversation with Christ in your life. Honoring Christ in your hearts is another way of saying be a person that is prayer saturated. And as you are praying in these different places, pray that there are chances, opportunities, elements that you can use to speak some aspect of your witness into. Pray just that you have a heart. That you have a heart that wants to share. What is the first prayer that you need to pray to increase your intentionality? Is it just to see eyes of people who need to hear hope? Is it to have a burden for the salvation of souls? Is it to recognize that every single person needs to hear the gospel? Some element in your reservation, in your hesitation, in your neglect of the word go needs to be prayed out. It needs to be brought into conversation with God. Why do you think this is not a time and a place to be hearing Jesus' word to go? Pray about that. When we look at places and we look at the L, I'm stacking acronyms together, but that is to remind us that we need to LILO. Now, the LILO is our mission statement that we help people live in and live out the good news of Jesus Christ. LILO is live in and live out. And basically what we're saying here is if you want to be a witness for Christ, you better be living like you're in Christ. You better be making that relationship with Christ a part of your life that cannot be overlooked. The world, as they get more and more separated from the church and from the life of the community of Christ, are more and more dependent upon the Christian in the marketplace to show them that Christ really is real. And so we need to make sure that we are people who live in and live out the good news, that we are people who do not make secularism and the divide of faith and work or the public and the private controlling over who we are. We should be known that we are Christians. Then when we come to A in the acronym places, Peter says that we're always being prepared to share. I think what Peter is saying there is that a disciple maker is available to share the gospel. That the life of a disciple maker is ready to make a disciple. And so the number one thing that I think combats with our readiness to share the gospel is our availability. We have scheduled out, filled up every nook and cranny, every slot of our day. We are busy so much with sports and so much with chores and so much with work and so much with friends and so much with Netflix and so much with bedtime and all of these things that you look back and you're like, I do not have time to be interrupted. I've got so much that I have to get done in every moment of my life to finish my day that we really just don't have availability to meet a neighbor or to be known by a neighbor or to spend a little time after work with a coworker. Busyness can be a major killer to our ability to be prepared. It does a wonderful job of sifting out and filtering out so many places and times and opportunities where someone might be able to ask us about what is the hope that is in you. But if we are too busy and unavailable, we are never prepared for them. Then when we see in the word places, see, that stands for connect. Peter says, be prepared for anyone who asks you about the hope. So these anyones, they're not believers, right? These anyones are non-Christians. They're unbelievers. They're still lost. The reason we know that is because Peter says if one of these people wants to know why you have a hope in you, these are people who do not have hope. And so how does an unbeliever, come up to talk to us about the hope that is in us? Well, that's only going to happen if we have some connection with unbelievers, if we have some connection with those people who do not yet know Christ, if we have some relationships with lost people. One of the kind of strange things that happens in the Christian life is that as we become more and more Christian, we become less and less connected to the unchristian world. And we don't have relationships of people who could ask us about the hope that is within us. We kind of fall into a holy huddle. But if we want to take the intentionality of go and make disciples and the intentionality that Peter has to be around people who do not know the hope for themselves, then we must be making a practice of connecting ourselves to people who don't know the gospel. We need to be pursuing relationships with people who don't have hope. And there's plenty of places to do that. You don't have to just go to some sinful place. You can do that over a campfire. You can do that over a garage sale. You can do that over a hobby. You can do that trunk-or-treating or trick-or-treating. You can do all sorts of things to meet and connect with neighbors. You can do that with fantasy football. How are your teams doing? But the idea is, if we are going to be goers, we must be connectors. We need to recognize if I don't have any non-Christians in my circle, in my orbit, in my day-to-day life, I am falling short of go. Then when it comes to E, this one, it will get the fit in just a moment, but it might feel a little forced, I admit. E is enjoy. And from 1 Peter's word, people that ask about the hope that is in you. The idea here is that Peter says people will look at your life and they will see something that is attractive, that is compelling, that brings them curiosity. And in the gospel, hope and joy are often side by side. Because if you have hope, you have joy that is transcendent of your situations or of your context. To be people of hope ought to mean that we are not the glummest face in the room, that we are not the wet blanket, that we're not the people saying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. People with hope and joy in the gospel should not be the person that brings the party to a stop, right? We ought to be the people that are most alive, most enjoyable, most engaged. And so when it comes to enjoy, we have to break down the stereotype that Christians are holier than thou buzz killers. We must not be the church lady in the room. If what we bring, if the energy that we bring is good morning sinners, I am a Christian, oh my goodness, you'll have nowhere to go. You'll be benched. And if you are presently benched, maybe there's a little church lady in you that needs to get prayed out. But here is the thing. We need to be people whose life is beautiful, that is something other people want to share with it. And so we need to enjoy life, and we need to be enjoyable people to share life with. And then finally, in places, the last part of places is the S, and that is to share. Now look at what Peter says, to make a defense with gentleness and respect. Often when we think about share, that's just, okay, well, let's just drop the gospel tract on this person. But I want you to dwell upon with gentleness and respect. When we share the gospel, let the gospel be shared through our life, through giving words to that hope that is within us, that makes sense of us sharing the gospel. And so when non-Christians or unbelievers see you in a mess, in a broken situation, see you vulnerable, see you sharing, that you don't have it figured out, that you have troubles, that you're struggling, but that the gospel continues to give you hope, that is very beautiful. That is compelling. And so as you share the gospel, share it from vulnerability. Share it from a fellow beggar needing bread, not as someone who is fixing you. So that is what we want to do when we seek to be intentional. We want to be praying. We want to be living in and living out the gospel. We want to be available. We want to be connecting. We want to be enjoying. And we want to be sharing. As we develop that mindset, we become intentional in all of the places that we go to make disciples. We cannot wait for the conditions to be right for us. If we constantly say, well, I didn't share the gospel this day, this week, this month, because the situation was never quite right, guess what you really are doing? You're securing the beachhead. And the battle is over here. The victory is over here. We cannot ignore the word go to secure the beachhead. We must go. And so let me give you two questions as challenges. What are the places that you have been placed to renew? Your workplace, your school, your sports team, your fantasy football league, your neighborhood. What are the places God has placed you? And then what is the next thing you need to do in places to make disciples there? And the third requirement of go is go requires evangelism. Go requires evangelism. 1 Peter says we must make a defense. Jesus says make disciples. There is no way to accomplish either of those commands, which are the same command, but by sharing the gospel message. We must do evangelism. We must use words. Now, there are many methods when it comes to evangelism, and I'm not here to say one is good and others are bad, but I want to make sure that you know that there are two great opportunities in our church today to develop in a method of evangelism. The first is our Share Suppers curriculum. We are going through a curriculum called Christianity Explored, and it is designed to be a seeker-friendly exploration of what is the story of Jesus. Why is Jesus our hope? Why is Jesus purposeful? Why is Jesus the answer to what we struggle with? It's good for us. I think that this material is stuff that we all need. We don't ever grow past this stuff. But it is also well designed to share the good news and to make you co-journers in sharing the gospel with people who maybe don't know it, or maybe have drifted away from it, or maybe have misunderstood it. And so this is a great season for you to say, listen, I would love for you to join me in one of our Share Suppers. We're just going to learn about what is the story of Jesus. If you have questions, this is just the place for you. We intend for Share Suppers to be a way for you to share Christ. It's actually why they're called Share Suppers. So take advantage of that. But then also, I want to end our time by teaching again, I try to refresh ourselves in this, a gospel presentation that I think is very effective and that I think is something that is doable and usable by us. And it is called the Three Circles Gospel Presentation. This is the cover of a book. I have copies of this book on the back table. It's called Turning Everyday Conversations into Gospel Conversations. If you would like a copy of that book, it will give you a detailed description of what I'm about to go through. It's yours for free at the table in the back. If you already have a copy, let someone else have a copy, all right? But here is what it looks like. I want to train us in the three circles, but I also want to present the three circles, because if you are somebody who doesn't really know the gospel, this also is my gospel presentation to you. On your piece of paper, if you grab one from the front or coming in, there is space to draw this. Let's get some muscle memory if you can. Draw this with me as we go through it. Here's what it looks like in gist. This is called the three circles. Next slide. It's three circles and three arrows where we talk about God's design, brokenness, and the gospel. And then these three arrows that connect. But basically, if you have a napkin or a piece of paper and you can draw circles, and I have hardly seen anyone that is that bad at drawing that can't do circles, that you really can do this on a napkin in a restaurant or anywhere. So to help you understand how these three circles work, I want to give this in kind of a context. Suppose you have a friend who has just lost their job, and they are crushed. They're afraid about their income. They're feeling aimless and purposelessness. They're struggling with their identity, and he just shares with you, I lost my job today. Now, you could just go, well, that's terrible. I'll be praying with you or praying for you about that. Or you could say, oh, I am so sorry that you have gone through that. I've gone through something like that, or even if I haven't, I know how hard that can be. Can I tell you a little bit about what helps me when life gets really difficult, or what helped me when I went through my job loss? Here's something that I discovered. I discovered that God has a design for us, for every part of our life, including our work. God created work. He created work to be satisfying, to be meaningful, to serve God and to serve other people. Work is something that we are made to do, and it's a good thing, and we should be desiring to work. But we also realize in your situation that we live in a world that is made work very hard. made work very unsatisfying, made work a dog-eat-dog, rat race sort of world. We've all tried to use our work to get ahead of other people rather than just helping other people. And that is because we've left God's design when it comes to work. We've decided to invent our own ways. And when we leave God's design, the word the Bible gives for that is sin. And sin takes us away from God's design. And now we live in a new area that is not ruled by God's design, but it is instead, it's a broken world. It's full of brokenness. I mean, we feel that brokenness when we feel worthless, when we don't do a good job, when we feel like the backbiting in the office, when we feel like we don't mean anything if we lose our job, our identity, and all of these things, our worth, are all caught up in our job. And we feel shame, and we feel anxiety, and we feel pressure. We rob time from our families and our spouses because we think that we have to give everything to our job. And so we find our lives just absolutely being crushed. That's brokenness. That's the brokenness of the workplace and the brokenness of being unemployed, making you feel like you're not worth anything. And so we try and do all sorts of things to fix that ourselves. We try to educate ourselves. We try to get better training. We try to increase our contacts or connections. But all of these things don't quite take away the fragility and the brokenness of the world that we are living in. But here's something that I want you to know. This is something that means so much to me, that I discovered that there is a fix that has been given to all of the brokenness in this world, the brokenness of the workplace, the brokenness of our marriages, the brokenness of all sorts of things. And that is what God has called for us, the gospel. The gospel is the story that God, through his son, Jesus Christ, came into a broken world, a world that has left his good and perfect design, to live amongst us and to live perfectly God's design, to do all that God desired, all that God required, all the things that we have not done. He did it, and he did it beautifully and fully, so that God looked at his son and he declared, "With you I am well pleased." But that's not where it stopped. God's son also went to the cross to be the punishment and the payment for all of the sins that have broken our world, all of the sins that have been committed against us, and all the sins that we have committed. All of the brokenness was placed upon Jesus to die for our sins. And then after he died, he was risen from the dead 3 days later, and that being risen from the dead declares to us that he really is who he said he was, and that his death really did pay for all the brokenness in this world. And so Jesus is God's fix. He is the good news that we have our purpose fulfilled and our brokenness paid for. And the way that we experience that good news is that we recognize we cannot fix our brokenness. We must repent, which is to say we must turn from the idea that I can fix my life, that I can make my life work all by myself. And we must believe in Jesus as the one who gives us the declaration that you are well-pleasing to God and you are forgiven. When we repent and we believe, we have the gospel in our hearts. And there, from that place, wherever that is, we are now able to live our life back towards God's design. Which means that as you face joblessness, you don't face joblessness as someone who doesn't have an identity. You don't face joblessness as someone who doesn't have any worth. Your worth and your identity is in Jesus, and your security is in Jesus. You see, those are the three circles that you take someone through. This is what we offer to people. This is a way to present it in an understandable and relational way. We are able to say to people who live in this world under the condemnation of failure, of brokenness, that in the gospel there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And I believe those words are not archaic. Those words still speak to the heart of the lost today. So what do I want us to grasp as we come to the end? We have good news to share. We have good news to share. We have the freedom and the joy to offer it. Why are we waiting? Why are we avoiding this command to go? It's a victory that we are proclaiming. It's forgiveness that we are proclaiming. It's life and hope that we are proclaiming. Why are we waiting? I want to end with a look at this image of the matches. This is given to us to kind of recognize how we are to live. We are to burn brightly with the life of Christ and share that light with the next person. But there's another level to this image that I want us to grasp. You've all lit a match. They do not stay lit for long. Matches have a short time before they burn out. You are a match. And as much as you may think your life goes on forever, you only burn for a short time. Do you want your match to burn out without passing it on to someone else, without taking the darkness out of someone else's life by giving them the light of Christ? Do you want to burn out on the beachhead, never having advanced into the darkness? Beloved, we have our orders. Let's go and make disciples. Amen?